The 12th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Kathy Wyatt.
When you hear the words Down syndrome, what comes to mind? Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, the chromosomal disorder that occurs in every 733 births. Joining us to talk more about it today are Mary McHale. She is the president of the Omaha Down Syndrome Parent Network. Next to her, Terry Lynch. Terry's son has Down syndrome. And finally, Katie Schiefen, who is a self-advocate. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, Kathy.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Mary, we're going to start with you. When you hear the words Down syndrome, what comes to mind?
You know, I can talk about what happened when I heard of it. And my first thoughts were, honestly, I never had to be a soccer mom. Because when my son was born, the misconception that I had was that children with Down syndrome and all children with disabilities, he'd never play soccer, he'd never walk, he'd never do basketball, never do any of that. So I always kind of looked for the pony and everything, and I thought I never have to be a soccer mom. Well, there's soccer for kids with disabilities, and there's basketball for kids with disabilities, and my son has a camouflage belt in karate. So all of those things that I never thought were going to be possible for him and available for him, those went out the window because there are so many more opportunities for our children now than there were a number of years ago.
Okay, and we do have a graphic. We want to talk about the facts. There are a lot of misnomers out there, and so if you could kind of walk us through the facts when it comes to Down syndrome.
Okay. Couple things. It is the most common cause of birth defects and chromosomal disabilities, as you mentioned, Kathy. It occurs 1 in every 733 births. Can involve some medical problems, but not all of our children who are born with Down syndrome do have the medical problems. And again, it's not related to race, national origin, economic status, and surprisingly enough, 80% of children with Down syndrome are born to mothers who are under the age of 35, which makes sense because more women under the age of 35 have babies than women over the age of 35. So it's a numbers game. Again, more babies born to women under the age of 35 than over the age of 35. So it's 1 in 733 births, however that shakes out.
Okay, thank you. And we did mention medical problems, and we do have a graphic that we want to put up to show our viewers there too some of the problems that really can occur.
Sure. And I think, you know, a good way of looking at this is when you find out that your baby has Down syndrome, sometimes you're given the information that, 40 to 60% of them have heart problems, they have hearing loss, you know, a certain percentage of that. I like to look at it, again, you know, as the glass half full or half empty. There's still 40 to 60% of children born with Down syndrome who don't have heart problems, so they don't have that. There's a lot of children who don't have hearing loss. There's a lot of children born with Down syndrome who don't have visual impairments, who don't have the upper respiratory, the GI problems. So, you know, you kind of do it a different way. My son had a number of medical issues, first 2 or 3 years, a lot of hospitalizations at Children's, but again, I mean, he's riding a bike and he goes to school and he plays basketball and soccer, does swimming and does all those kind of things. So yes, our children, some of them are born with some medical issues, but there's a whole lot that are born that don't have the medical problems at all.
What a wonderful attitude to have. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And you are the president, as I understand it, of an organization here in Omaha.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that organization and your role with that.
It's an all-volunteer organization, and in fact, our 10-year anniversary will be January of 2009, that we started with 5 families who wanted to get together and talk about, you know, does your child do this? Does your child do that? Who do you go to for a physician for this? Who's a good speech therapist? So kind of started as a networking support group. And over the past soon to be 10 years, we started with those 5 families, and we probably have about 300 families on our mailing list right now. We provide opportunities for parents and family members to go to seminars and conferences. We do special events. We put on seminars here in the Omaha area. We partner with some of our other disability groups in Omaha, the Arc of Omaha at the Ollie Webb Center, the C. Lewis Meyer Foundation, so that, you know, if they're doing something and it makes sense for us to be involved with it, we partner with them, because again, we're all in this together, and we want to be sure that our families get the support and the information that they need. We publish a bi-monthly newsletter. All of our information is translated into Spanish, so we publish in both English and in Spanish. We've just started this really exciting program called the Down Syndrome Specialist Program, where we have partnered with 16 of our area school districts. They've identified people within the district who will be the Down syndrome specialist for not only the general ed teachers in that school district, but the special ed teachers in that district. So we kind of took a key turn from the autism group, because there's autism consultation teams in all of the school districts, and just like there's nuances to educating a student with autism, there's nuances to educating a student with Down syndrome. And we want to be sure that our school districts have the information and have the support, and we want to partner with them. So we're really excited about that program.
Excellent. And Terry, you know all too well what Mary is talking about. You're actively involved and engaged in all of this. Tell us your story.
I have a son that's 35 years old, and he was born in 1973, a long time ago. There was not an organization like ODSPN, and we were living in a small town and really very few resources. Reaching out to try and figure out what to do with this baby at that time, we did make a decision to move to Omaha. We were in a small community not too far from here, and then we did put him in the infant STEM program at Monroe Myers, which was at that time the only thing that there really was to offer. And he lives with us. He doesn't speak, he's nonverbal, he needs help going to the restroom, he doesn't feed himself, so he's pretty high care, but he gets on a bus every day and goes to a workshop at 7 a.m. and he's ready to go. He has friends there, and he's just as happy as can be there. Then he spends, after the workshop, he spends a couple hours at a group home just until I can get there to pick him up. So that's his day. And he has lived with us all his life. We certainly at one point thought that would be what we wished for him, but we're rethinking all of that now.
And it's been quite a journey. I guess what I would like to do is, if we could, have you talk specifically to those parents out there who are just beginning this journey. You say he's 35 years old, so this has been kind of a long road for you and your husband. And you know, there are going to be folks that are going to be watching this show who have either just learned or they're just starting out. What would you tell them if they were sitting here?
Well, I think that belonging to a group like ODSPN, or for me, my involvement was with the Nebraska Village of Promise a couple of years ago, really looking at what's available in the community. It appeared to me that we just have Beatrice or groups homes, and I was really looking for something for David in the future that was more community-based, and the Nebraska Village of Promise is developing a concept that is a village concept that the residents would live in small homes and everything would be in close proximity to them, so they weren't being put on a bus and going for a couple hours across town. That there would be transportations to work outside of the home, outside of their little homes, or workshops nearby, or perhaps there's an idea of having a greenhouse or a dog and grooming home, or dog and grooming business there, so they could work there. It's more of a village community living type concept, and it's through that organization that I was introduced to ODSPN, because we're networking, looking at where can we talk to people about looking at other choices for our adults, children, because for me, my husband and I have to make that choice for our child. He's nonverbal, and we think we know what's best for him.
Okay, and speaking of adult children, Katie joins us today, and we appreciate it very much. Now, Katie, I understand you have a job at Lakeside Hospital here in town.
Yes.
Why don't we start off by having you tell us a little bit about your job?
I like my job.
What do you do at the hospital?
Wipe tables, wipe chairs, stack supplies, and hang them in lens.
And what do you like to do in addition to your job?
Help my teammate.
Your teammates?
Yeah,
Talk to me about your teammates.
teammate is best and new people.
Okay, very good. And Mary,
Katie started volunteering at Lakeside before she turned 21 and aged out of the young adult program at Millard Public Schools.
That's
and I know
right.
I'm going to tell a story about Katie. When Katie, they saw Lakeside Hospital be built, and she said to her mother, and I don't know how old you were, that's where I want to work. And so, you know, we all have dreams, you know, where we're going to work and what we're going to do. And one of the dreams that Katie had was, I want to work at Lakeside Hospital.
that's quite an accomplishment, Katie.
I know.
Pretty proud of yourself, I would imagine, huh?
Yeah,
I'd say so.
And Lakeside has been great to work with Katie and her family. She had to fill out an application and had to interview just like anybody else, but
Yeah.
I think she might be one up on us. I think she's gotten a couple of raises already in her short time that she's been an employee out at Lakeside.
yep.
You must be doing a pretty good job there.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome. They're very fortunate to have you. Now, when you're not working at Lakeside, what are you doing? Do you enjoy being outdoors or?
I like being outdoors.
Uh-huh. That's good. And we've been talking with Terry and Mary. They're both moms
Yeah.
of kids and adult kids with Down syndrome. Talk to us about your mom and dad. Could you do that?
Sure. Mommy, Dad, thank you a little for me.
And if they were sitting here right now with us, what would you tell your mom and dad?
I told Mommy, Dad, Mommy, Dad are the nice parents I have.
Yeah, they must be pretty special people, as you are as well, Katie.
They've always encouraged Katie to do whatever she wanted to do and to always strive to do the best that she can. Katie has been a Miss Amazing Nebraska person.
Yep, that's right.
So she has a crown. It's again, not something I've gotten in my life, hard to believe, I know. And she was recently featured on the National Down Syndrome Society on their website as a self-advocate, which is a new program that they've started on their website, so we're excited about that. Katie is also a board member on the Omaha Down Syndrome Parents Network. So she comes to our board meetings and contributes just like the rest of the board members, and
Yeah.
we're glad for her input because we want to know, we as parents or community people might think we know what we should do and shouldn't do, but she definitely gives great input about, you know, this is me and this is my life and here's some things that I'm interested in and other people like me are interested in also.
And so, Katie, when you're out in the community talking to people or even sitting with us right now, what is the message? What is it that you tell people about Down syndrome?
Down syndrome help other people.
Yeah. You want to help other people.
Yeah, just like Mary McHale.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. You all three are here to help other people. And
Yeah.
so we appreciate you being here.
Carrie.
And Terry too, yes. And Terry too. I want to.
Mary.
Pardon?
And Mary.
And Mary.
And Mary.
Mary and Terry. I want to change gears a little bit and talk about the changes that we've seen over the years. You know, we were visiting before the show about even the testing, and Terry had said that, you know, when she was back in her day, they didn't have the testing, and now we have much more of that. And I guess what I'd like you to do is talk to us about the testing that is available and the decisions that are made as a result
Sure.
of having that testing available. Mary, we'll start with you.
Well, the American College of Obstetricians Gynecologists made a recommendation in January of 2007 that all women undergo prenatal testing, and specifically for Down syndrome, because that's what the tests that we have in place right now. And most women, you know, again, it's your choice whether to have that test done or not. The test, and I'll reiterate this, is it's only a number. The only definitive test for identifying absolutely positively with a 99.9% degree of accuracy is an amniocentesis. So what these tests give you is a 1 in 500, a 1 in 300. So they give you an odds of that your child might have Down syndrome. Definitively, you have to have an amnio. So these tests are done within somewhere between like 10 and 14 weeks gestational age. There's a study that is out that says if mothers are delivered the news through a test, not through an amnio, but through a test that their child might have Down syndrome, that 90% go ahead and terminate the pregnancy. And our organization is about pro-information. We are about giving our families and our potential families the information that they need to make in order to make an informed choice. And that choice can include adoption too. There is a waiting list of people across the United States who want to adopt a child with Down syndrome. So if those same families talk to another family who has a child with Down syndrome, that pregnancy termination rate goes down to 60%. So, you know, information is power. Information lets you make that informed decision. There's a recent bill that President Bush signed into effect in October of 2008, and it was part of the bill was the Kennedy-Brownback Amendment. And what that amendment says is that starting next year, when doctors deliver the news to their patients that through this prenatal test, here are your odds that your child might have Down syndrome, that they need to let their patients know there's a support group in your area, that here is the National Down Syndrome Society, National Down Syndrome Congress website, here is a packet of information, would you like to talk to somebody about it? And again, you know, the hopes are would go from that 90% termination, pregnancy termination rate to 60% pregnancy termination rate. Again, we're about information. So we look to this as a great opportunity to inform, to let our parents and potential parents know you do have options. And you know, 40 to 60% have heart problems, yeah, but 40 to 60% don't. 30% have hearing problems, well, 70% don't. And in my life, and I know Tara can attest to this, our children are born, some of them have lots of medical issues, some none at all, and some somewhere in between. And you get through all of those things because you have a child. In the disability world, they talk about people first language, so you don't say you have a Downs baby, you have a Downs child. So you have a child with Down syndrome, you have a baby with Down syndrome, because you have a child first, and they are happy and healthy and aggravating and frustrating, and they get sad and they get mad, and guess what, they're just like any other child. And yes, they have Down syndrome, but you know, you still have a baby.
Terry, talk to us about a little bit more about your journey. And I guess I really would like to know, for those folks out there who are in this boat and they haven't been able to be exposed to the programs and services that you're talking about, boy, if you could tell them one thing that would get them, you know, kind of over that bridge, Terry, what would it be?
To make sure that they seek out the support systems that are available. And in Omaha, Mary's organization is relatively new. I think you were formed in 1999. My David was born in 1973. And there was really nothing. There wasn't really much for prenatal testing. And certainly I was 23 and had no idea that I could have a Down syndrome child. But had I had some idea, I perhaps could have been emotionally prepared and started to seek out those kinds of resources that are available, so that you begin to understand how to care for this child that has Down syndrome.
Okay, and we've talked a lot about the program with which you're associated, but Terry, talk to us, for those people who are watching across the state. What is it that they can be doing? What types of calls do they make? What's that first phone call that they will have to try to figure out how to start to find solutions?
I think most pediatricians are pretty well informed now about what resources are available through ODSPN. And can you suggest any other organization?
There's a group in Lincoln, the Down Syndrome Association for Families, and so they're also a great resource because they kind of do the families in Lincoln and then the surrounding areas. There's another great resource through PTI Nebraska, and what PTI Nebraska has is they have a program called Parent-to-Parent Support. So if you live in Broken Bow, you could call PTI Nebraska, and they would be able to tell you, oh, you know, there is a parent, maybe not in Broken Bow, but forgive my geography, what's close to Broken Bow?
Litchfield, Nebraska.
Litchfield. There's a family in Litchfield who has a child with Down syndrome. Would you like to talk to them? So again, it's providing that networking, letting them know that they're not alone. Because I think, at first, and whether, I always say when you rip the Band-Aid off, it hurts. So it doesn't matter if you rip it off when you're pregnant or you rip it off at delivery and the room gets really quiet. Hello, what's going on? It still hurts, so it's let those families know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And at our big fundraiser every year is the Buddy Walk. In fact, we just had our last one in October here at UNO, and it was great. And the feedback that we get from our families is that from what their extended families and their friends get is that, oh, you're not the only one.
No.
And they see our families where the child with Down syndrome was the only child, the first child, the middle child, the last child, identical twins, fraternal twins, I mean, just kind of all over the map. And again, we're just like everybody else. We have a child, yes, they have Down syndrome, but again, we're more alike than different.
Well, I'm absolutely pleased that you brought up the whole networking concept, because really, whether it's Down syndrome or something else, the support in the rural versus the metropolitan
It's really
is
important.
huge. It's just a big difference. We in Omaha, we have a lot of these programs and services available, again, not only with Down syndrome but other things. And I do believe that sometimes folks in the rural communities feel like they're out in left field,
Right.
that there's no one there to help them. And so for you to be talking so much about the importance of networking is very big. But I will challenge you, and Terry, I think I'm going to ask this of you. There still are going to be people who will be watching saying, you haven't quite convinced me yet. I'm over here in left field. I'm scared. I'm not sure, what I should be doing. Speak specifically to those folks.
Well, I felt very isolated when David was born and lived in a small community, and since there really at that time wasn't anything or other parents to seek out, and I didn't know anybody with a child like mine, that we did make the decision to move to Omaha. But I think now there are so many resources that you can reach out to, that you don't have to move to Lincoln or to Omaha. There are resources out there, and just to reach out in your pediatrician and on the web, you should be able to find other parents who can say, it's going to be all right, just let me talk to you, or let's just see what we can do here and take it one day at a time, because I went through a depression because I just didn't know what to do. I was 23, I felt alone, and it was very difficult.
The internet's such a powerful tool now. There's so many different message boards and websites that, families, when they get the news, if they live in outstate Nebraska, and you can Google almost anything, so you can, this is my situation.
Right.
Are there other families in the same situation as me? And you will hear from families all across the United States, not just Nebraska. And I think, so whether you talk on the phone, whether you talk in person, whether you communicate with somebody via the internet, it's again, letting them know you're not alone, you're not the only one. And our children do a lot of different things. There was a workshop called You Will Dream New Dreams. So when you have a child born, probably with any type of disability, you think before they're born you're going to have the next president and cure for cancer and all that stuff. And so you had those dreams, and those dreams, part of them, or maybe all of them, might be gone, but you still then have new dreams for this child that you have. You want them to be happy, you want them to be healthy, you want them to have friends, you want them to have hobbies, you want them to work at a job, maybe get raises as often as she did. Better than me, I think she's doing great. Those things. So it's still those parent expectations that you have for your child with a disability that you'd have for your children that don't have disabilities.
Well, and I want to go back though to something you said, Terry, because I think it's critical. You talked about depression. We think of this as one issue. This is Down syndrome. We need to deal with this child. We need to deal with how we're feeling. That brings up a whole different realm for folks, that not only are you dealing with all these other things, but now you're feeling depressed. And so I can really appreciate where you were coming from, Mary, with stay connected, stay plugged into something, so that you know that you're not out there in left field. Which will bring me to the final point really here today, which is funding. You know, obviously these programs and services that we've been discussing are not free, and we do need to fund them. You talked about the walk, but Terry, what other ways are we coming up with, and what do you know from a state perspective that's available out there to people like Katie and her family and your families and so forth?
Well, I think Nebraska has been a leader in really providing services with the preschool age and infant stimulation programs through the school age years. But really where right now Nebraska has dropped the ball is between the time they leave the high school and they're entering the transition time to employment, whether that be a workshop or employment at a restaurant or like Katie who works at the hospital, that there's a real gap in funding and many times a wait list. For my son, he had to wait about 3 years before he was eligible for a workshop. Now that's a long time. They lose a lot of ground. And currently, my message right now that I'm really trying to get out is that there is a crisis situation facing people, not just with Down syndrome, but any kind of developmentally disabled adult and their families who are waiting for residential care. It is in crisis situation. We know there are about 1,800 in the state of Nebraska who are on that list, and that includes my son.
And the average waiting list right now for residential services in the state of Nebraska is 10 years. Terry testified before a committee about a month or so ago, and the part of the testimony was if you have a 3-year-old with a developmental disability right now in the state of Nebraska, when your 3-year-old turns 21, you will wait 20 years for your child with a disability to receive residential services in the state of Nebraska.
If something doesn't change. And of course, we think that if you give this situation a voice and enough people can bring their concerns to the legislation, that they will allocate more dollars. Because it's clearly a problem of availability and dollars allocated for adults to be able to live freely in the community.
Absolutely, and we do
With
have,
help.
speaking of these resources, we do have some graphics we want to put up. One is your Omaha organization, and
great.
then the other is for Nebraska Health and Human Services. So we have the Omaha Down Syndrome Parents Network, and you have the website there, www.odspn.org, and then Nebraska Health and Human Services. The phone number there, 471-3121. Katie, Terry, Mary, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. We appreciate it. Katie, good luck to you at Lakeside. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
The 12th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.